Hello and welcome. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the First Peoples of my beautiful country, Australia, the traditional owners of the Yugambeh land I live and work on, and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi, I'm Sam, the Creative Alchemist Art Therapist. I'm doing this video to show you how to use water pens. These are water pens just here. I have 3 sizes, and no matter what size you have, they all work the same way. They also last quite a long time, as you can see by how raggedy and stained these ones are. I've had them for quite a long time. The ends are a little frayed, very stained, but they still work just fine. I always like to fill mine right to the very brim so that I don't have to keep going back and filling them over and over again. And you should also make sure that they're screwed on all the way, otherwise it might leak when you want to use it, and you don't want that. So to start with, you'll need to fill the chambers by unscrewing the lid and putting the water down into the hole. Just regular tap water is fine. I recommend running the tap and tilting the chamber just slightly so that the water just goes over the edge of this bit here, and so that as the water goes in, the air comes out. And this will help you fill up the chamber quickly. And then screw it back on. And we're good to go. And as you can see, the chambers are quite flexible so that you can squeeze them to encourage the water to flow out, but that's not really necessary. As a general rule, it will do it by itself with no extra help from you. It's just every now and again you might find that the tip becomes quite dry, and you can just give it a little bit of a squeeze to help encourage the water come out. And once you have the water loaded, it's time to start playing. I'm going to use this to show you how I use the watercolor pens. I've uploaded this onto my website as a PDF for you to download and print out if you want to join in as I'm doing it. I've drawn this on watercolor paper, so it's actually quite thick compared to normal printing paper, and I don't know if you can see it, but the texture's quite rough. Yeah, I can't seem to... Yeah, there, you can kind of see it there. The texture's really rough, but smooth paper's fine too, just as long as it's a little bit thicker than your normal printing paper. I'll start off by showing you how I use the water pen with dry cake pots. These here are from Faber-Castell, but you can get any brand. Essentially what it means is these are cakes of pigment and they're dry to touch. So what I do with these is I take my water pen and I will brush it back and forth along the dry cake, and I will load up my pen with as much or as little pigment as I want. As you can see here, it's all nice and loaded with that red. So the more you put it back and forth like this, the more pigment you will have on the end of your brush. And once your brush is loaded with the pigment, you simply use it in the same way as you would any other brush. Or even kind of like a pen, I guess, because I'm holding it more like a pen. As you can see there with this roughness, it was quite dry, so I am going to give it a little bit of a squeeze, but not too much to get that water flowing. And then you can just smooth it across the paper. And then that's one solid color there, but you can also, if you keep going, you can see that you can make the pigment fade over time. So it's up to you if you want to keep loading it and keeping it the same, or if you want the colour to slowly fade and even end up with a bit of an ombre effect. Having it dark on the edges and lighter in the middle. And if it has too much pigment, you can then pick it up and put it somewhere else. It won't get rid of all of the pigment doing it that way, but you can sometimes get rid of some of the pigment. I might take some of the pigment from this one and pull it over into here. I'll often have a spare piece of paper handy so that when I'm done, I give it a bit of a squeeze and I just get the rest of the pigment off the brush before I go to the next colour. Any spare piece of paper that you have that you do this on isn't a waste, because you can then use it to rip it up and do collage, or you can do drawings over the top of it. It's completely up to you, but it doesn't have to be wasted. You can also get watercolour crayons. These ones are Neocolor 2s. And when I'm using these, all I do is colour on the paper first. And the more you fill up the area, the more pigment there will be. So if I wanted it really dark pigment like this, I would cover the whole area with the pigment. However, I don't. So I just fill up the top and then I start colouring over the top. It activates the pigment and then you can pull it down into the paper. For this one I want the two different colours, so I'm going to start with the darker colour, which probably isn't a good idea. Maybe start with a lighter colour. I never was one to do things properly, so. And then I'm going to get the lighter colour and I'm going to bring it up. And then they mix in the middle. It's a lot easier to get that ombre effect with things like the crayons and then also the pencils, which is what I will show you next. Although the pencils work in pretty much exactly the same way as the crayons anyway, it's just that the pencils you can give them more of a tip, so you can have some more control and detail, whereas this thicker one, it kind of goes all over the place sometimes and doesn't stay in the lines. So it's up to you which one you prefer. I highly suggest just trying them all and figuring out which one you like the best. Okay, so last up we have the pencils. Let's do the rainbow. So rip out your guts before vomiting. Rip, R, red. Out, O, orange. Your, Y, yellow. Guts, G, green. Before, blue. Vomiting, violet, or in my case purple, or puking, I guess. That's just my way of remembering the order of the rainbow. So I'm going to turn it upside down, upside down. These are my colours. These ones are just Derwent Inktense. There's plenty of different watercolours out there. These ones are really darkly pigmented. They have a lot of pigment, so you don't always need to use colour the whole thing in, especially not if you want the gradient colour. I'll just do one band to show you. Yep, this is the red one. Orange. Yellow. Green. See, I'm an artist, and even then I had to think guts before I could remember that it was green. B before. And what is this? Thistle. Well, we'll just call it violet, shall we? I think I might use the smaller brush this time. It's a lot thinner. That's really good for detailed work, for like these tiny little bits and pieces. I could probably use the medium one here, but I'll just do this. And I'm not even actually going to wipe off the pigment because there's not a lot on the brush. I probably will for the yellow because yellow's really light, and so you really notice any extra colours that are in there. But when I go to the green, green already has yellow in it, so the green will absorb any of the yellow pigment that is left on my brush. It's quite juicy, this one. The water keeps coming out really quick. And again, purple has blue in it, so the purple pigment will absorb the blue. And there you have it. I might actually show you side by side what happens if the difference between doing just that line across and if I fill the whole lot in. So as you can see, the pigment's a lot darker on this side, and then it slowly fades on this side. And it's really up to you which you prefer out of the two. Let me just see. that's pretty much dry now, and if you do this and you decide you don't like it, you can always add more pigment over the top. Just give it a bit of a wet brush over again. So you can always add more pigment if you want to. Now you can, if you want to, lay the water down first and put the pencil over the top. That's also another way of doing it. Not my preferred way. I would probably still go over it with the water afterwards. Or sometimes what I do with the crayons is I'll load the pigment onto the brush just by, oops, I keep spraying it everywhere. Load the pigment on by rubbing the brush over the crayon. As you can see, or maybe not, I don't know, it's picked up the pigment and you can just add it. Usually doing it this way though, you won't get quite as dark pigment as if you just coloured in the piece of paper. And always remember that if it gets a little bit dry, just give it a tiny little squeeze and more water will start to come out. And that's it. I hope you've found this helpful and you feel confident to now use your water brush to create until your soul is content. But more than anything, just experiment. Try everything I've shown you and see if you can come up with other stuff. You could probably spray water on the paper and load your brush with the pigment and then just dab the pigment on the paper to create effects. So just experiment and have fun. I'm just going to continue colouring in this now and I'm going to fast forward it if you want to watch it and see how it turns out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, hit the subscribe button and feel free to go and visit my website and get this image for you to colour in.